I welcome everyone and anyone who ever listens to this recording. Now, today's topic will be very simple, very short, but insightful, and maybe it reveals some of the aspects of things that we use in the world, certain words and concepts, which should be altogether rethought. And not to speak like this in the air, it's about trust. Now, we could have used the word faith, but exactly because of the misconceptions, we use the word trust, because actually these two are identical, equal. Because if somebody has a great faith, it should not mean, at least from the standpoint of a Nana yogi or Nana yoga, it must not mean that one takes things for granted. Oh, that great master has said that, so be it. Because that great master might have said that, but just because of his words or her words, one doesn't get further insight into the nature of reality or into the nature of any phenomena. So, therefore, the word trust simply means that there is this understanding. For example, the students in the school trust their teacher. It doesn't mean that they should not examine what the professor says, because also the professors might make mistakes. It means that there is this well understood intuitive knowledge that being there for some reason, we might not even know the reason when we go to first grade, second grade, but for some reason that big person was put there to tell me some things that should be useful for me in the future. And not to speak about school and these things necessarily, even when one walks the path, then sooner or later one will encounter a teacher, help, another student, a guru, or call it as you wish. And there has to be this trust in that being, because of having seen that the things that certain being speaks of leads to direct understanding, and only in this case it's worth it and reasonable to listen, because having seen with one's own inner eyes the adequacy, the reality of the things expressed, one will have a natural trust in that certain teaching. And it's very important that there are several things towards which one can have trust. One can have trust towards one's own teacher, one's teacher's teaching, and those beings, what normally we call the community. Now, the community should not mean what we mean by community. The community means those beings who have already eradicated or are, intensely working on eradicating feathers of existence. And so these are the major three things that one may have faith towards, trust towards on the path. And of course, one or the other one may be, absent. So for example, if one is living somewhere where one cannot encounter a teacher or a teaching, and one goes into meditation and one sees all these things without help, then of course they don't have trusts in a teacher or in a community. They will have trust in the teaching because they themselves have seen it, and whatever one knows, one trusts, which is not the case in the other way, because even though I might trust something, it doesn't mean that I know it. So therefore, knowledge comes first, and then trust in that certain thing. Or there might be beings who have a teacher and a teaching, but no community, no other beings with which they can discuss their understanding outside the teacher. Or there can be teaching and community, but maybe no teacher. Say certain beings come together and they start to discuss something without a teacher. They just simply meet and then they do it and they just go home. So there are several ways through which such trust can be formed. But I want to speak about a more subtle appearance of trust. And that is about, for example, how to put it, the reality of cessation. So when we speak about cessation, some beings might, from direct experience know that it is indeed great and it is indeed blissful. But, some beings might think, okay, let's say that I put my whole life into sensual desires. And right now, this guy is telling me that is impermanent suffering and such things. And it is fearful somehow to think of giving it up, to give up the grasping, to give up the holding on. And, one will not have, doubts about if one has already, eradicated some feathers, one will not have doubt about the way towards cessation, but one might have this feeling of shock of, wow, I put my life into conceits, and right now I see that I have to give it up, but how fearful it might be to live without conceits. Just an example of what may arise, but it goes for all the feathers. And especially the feather of identity view, to feel that there's a self. How fearful it would be to not experience any self in me or anywhere. And this might be a big terrorizing moment for the mind to realize that it doesn't really exist in the sense of one mind, because it's always a new mind in every moment, so to say. And it goes for the body as well. And, at that moment, one has doubt because one has not eradicated doubt. But even after eradicating doubt, one might have this shock feeling of having put one's life into things. And then I have to realize that it actually doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any sense. And then one has this trust. There is this faculty of trust, we might say, of faith, having known that things are filled with suffering and one is unable to turn back to suffering. It's like not being able to stay in the mundane, but being shocked about the supramundane. And one doesn't oscillate because one is still in the mundane, therefore. Only that there is this, how to say this? There is this oscillation in the mind. There is this restlessness of, but should I do this? Okay, I know it's suffering, but even though it's suffering, it's so terrorizing to see that there are no self, for example, or such things one may encounter even without doubt, because one doesn't doubt that the path is effective and it does its work. Only that because of the feathers and because of our grasping to the feathers, it might be unpleasant to see the reality of things. And then one has this trust that all those great masters I have read about and I have heard their teachings, they all proclaim this truth of cessation of everything. And then one realizes that if all those beings before me have spoken about one ultimate reality going beyond form, formless, senses, all the six senses, and it doesn't matter where I look, into Shankara's teaching, into the teachings of the Buddha, into no matter what teaching I look at, I still see that they say that all these things are defilements and impurities. Then one has this faith, this trust that those beings must have seen it and must have known it, and that is why they proclaimed it for the generations yet to come. And then one has this trust that indeed those things that one grasps at or grasps to, or indeed filled with suffering, and then one with an easier heart, with ease, can continue to develop understanding, insight, wisdom into the nature of reality. So this is really a short Krishna Speaks, and this is just the emphasis of for those who might encounter such things during meditation, that how do I know? And then when one doesn't have doubt, there is this trust in the things heard and experienced before. So because those before us have seen it as such, and for a reason we look up to them, for them having been great beings, that will be the reason sometimes for which one can even with an even greater integrity continue, even greater concentration, continue to cultivate insight and not fear the cessation of the six senses. And then one at the end, when actually reaches that, one can look back at oneself, how foolish one was to think that there is anything fearful in something which has no feeling in it. And so shall it be.